The alien princess scoffed at his armor. Then he took it off and left her speechless. The floor reflected every movement like calm water. Alien nobles from many worlds stood in careful lines, their robes flowing, their armor polished and beautiful. This court was not made for war. It was made for pride. At the center stood Princess Salatha of Vierlia. She was young by her people's standards, but already known across nearby systems. She was sharp of mind, strong of voice, and proud of her world's advanced technology. Her people believed strength should look elegant. Shields should shine, weapons should hum with energy. Anything rough or simple was seen as backward. That belief was why she smiled now. Before her stood the human envoy. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and silent. Thick, dark armor covered him from neck to boots. The metal was scratched and dull, marked by long use. There were no glowing lines, no smooth curves, no beauty by Vierlian standards. It looked heavy, old, almost crude. A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the court. Salatha raised one hand and the sound faded. Her eyes studied the human slowly from helmet to boots. Then she spoke. "So this is humanity's representative?" she said, her tone calm but sharp. "I expected more." Some nobles clicked their tongues in agreement. Others hid smiles behind their hands. The human did not move. Salatha stepped closer, her long cloak whispering across the crystal floor. "That armor," she continued, "is it ceremonial, or do humans truly believe metal can protect them in modern battle?" Soft laughter followed. No one interrupted her. This was her court. The human finally spoke. "It is not ceremonial," he said. His voice was deep, steady, and controlled. It carried across the hall without effort. "It is used." That answer only amused the court more. Salatha tilted her head. "Used against what? Plasma, energy blades." "Gravity weapons," she gestured lightly. "Our shields adapt in real time. Our warriors move faster than sight. Your armor looks like something from a museum." The human did not reply at once. He stood still, hands at his sides. Princess Salatha felt a small irritation. Most envoys reacted quickly. They defended themselves. They argued. This one simply waited. "Do you disagree?" she asked. "I do not," the human said. That answer surprised her. A murmur spread through the nobles. "You do not," Salatha repeated. "No," he said. "Your technology is advanced." She smiled, satisfied. "Then why arrive like this?" she asked. "Why wear something so heavy?" The human looked around the court. He saw perfect armor that barely touched skin. He saw glowing shields hovering in the air. He saw confidence without doubt. Finally, he met the princess's eyes. "Because where we come from," he said, "beauty does not stop a blade." The laughter returned, louder this time. One noble stepped forward, his armor shaped like flowing crystal. "You insult us in our own hall," he said. The human turned his head slightly. "No insult was intended." "Then what was?" Salatha asked. "An explanation." She studied him again. Something about his calm bothered her. He was surrounded by power, yet he showed no fear. "No need to impress. You humans are new to the wider galaxy," she said. "You should be careful how you speak." The human bowed his head slightly. "Understood." That only made her feel more in control. "Tell me," she said, circling him slowly, "how many battles has that armor seen?" "Many," he answered. "How many victories?" "Enough." Her smile widened. "Enough for what?" "For survival." The word echoed strangely in the hall. Salatha stopped walking. "Is that all humans care about?" she asked. "Survival?" The human paused. "It is where we begin." That answer drew silence, not because it was powerful, but because it did not fit. Other species spoke of honor, of dominance, of legacy. Survival sounded small. Salatha laughed once softly. "You wear that armor as if the galaxy itself wishes you harm," she said. The human did not smile. "It often does." A few nobles shifted uneasily. Princess Salatha straightened. "You stand before the crystal court of Vierlia," she said. "A place where strength is measured by progress, not fear." She raised her chin. "And yet you hide behind layers of metal." The human lifted his gaze. "Would you prefer I remove it?" The court went silent. Salatha blinked. "Remove it?" "Yes," some nobles whispered urgently. Others leaned forward with interest. "You would stand unprotected?" she asked. "I would stand as I am," he replied. The princess felt a spark of curiosity. She had expected protest, not agreement. "Very well," she said after a moment. "If you believe this will improve your standing." She stepped back and raised one hand. "Show us the human beneath the armor." The human inclined his head once. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for the seals at his shoulders. The sound of metal unlocking echoed in the hall. He removed the helmet first. His face was human and plain, dark hair cut short, eyes calm and focused. A thin scar crossed one cheek, old and faded. No fear showed there. He set the helmet on the floor. Whispers began again. Next came the chest plate. It was heavier than it looked. When he lifted it away, several nobles gasped quietly. Underneath, his clothing was simple and worn. His frame was strong, not built for display, but for function. Princess Salatha watched closely now. She expected weakness. She did not see it. The human continued, removing each piece carefully. Arm guards, leg plates, heavy boots. Each piece landed with a solid sound, marking time. When he finished, the armor lay in a silent circle around him. He stood unarmed, unshielded, and still. The laughter did not return. Instead, the court felt uncertain. Salatha narrowed her eyes. She saw old marks on his skin, not fresh, not dramatic, but signs of long strain. His posture was relaxed, yet ready as if his body remembered danger even in peace. "This is what you wished us to see?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "and what am I meant to understand?" she pressed. "That the armor is not what makes us strong," a noble scoffed. "Then why wear it at all?" The human turned to him. "Because strength alone does not stop reality." Salatha felt something shift inside her. She had expected embarrassment. She had expected the human to look small. Instead, she felt the room growing smaller around him. "You stand before warriors who could end you in seconds," she said carefully. "I know," he replied, "and yet you do not tremble." "No. Why?" "Because this is not the most dangerous place I have stood," he said. The silence that followed was heavy. Princess Salatha held his gaze. For the first time since he entered her court, she did not see an envoy. She saw someone who had endured things her people avoided. "Tell me, human," she said slowly, "what do you call yourself?" He bowed his head. "My name is Captain Elias Ward," he said, "of the Terran Coalition." The name meant nothing to her, yet the way he spoke it made the court listen. "And you believe this survival of yours deserves respect?" she asked. "No," he answered. "I believe it explains us." She studied the armor on the floor again. It no longer looked crude, it looked honest. The princess did not realize it yet, but the laughter of the crystal court had already ended. And something far more dangerous had begun, understanding. Captain Elias Ward, the human envoy, stood at the center, unarmored but unshaken. His calm, disciplined presence had replaced the laughter that had once filled the hall. The nobles whispered among themselves, unsure how to react. Princess Salatha's eyes, sharp as ever, followed his every move. Her initial amusement had vanished, replaced by curiosity, and something she did not yet understand. She studied his arms, strong and lean, not the delicate elegance of her world's warriors, but clearly capable of incredible effort. His shoulders were wide, his hands calloused from years of use. His eyes did not dart nervously. They did not sparkle with pride or arrogance. They simply observed, measured, calculated. "Tell me," Salatha said, her voice still tinged with the remnants of her amusement, "why would a human choose to wear such heavy armor if it is not for show?" Elias straightened, his posture perfect. "Because beauty does not protect life, function does. In our worlds, danger is constant. Armor is a tool, it is not meant to impress." A murmur passed through the nobles. One of them, a tall alien named Velian, stepped forward. His armor shimmered in the light, a masterpiece of Viorlian design. "And what is this danger you speak of? Our shields adapt instantly. Our weapons strike faster than thought. Nothing can harm us here." Elias did not flinch. "I do not doubt your technology is strong, but it cannot protect against everything. There are environments, weapons, and conditions where only endurance matters, where only human will matters." Salatha tilted her head. She had not expected him to answer so calmly. Most envoys would have stumbled or boasted, yet here was a human, calm, confident, and unwavering. Her pride prickled at the thought. She was used to commanding attention. Now she was wondering about this human. "Explain this endurance," Salatha said, folding her arms. "What is it that humans can do that others cannot?" Elias nodded slightly. "We survive where others would fall. We continue when everything tells us to stop. When machines fail, when allies retreat, when resources vanish, we adapt. We persist. This is what our armor represents. It is protection, yes, but also proof of the worlds we have survived." Salatha paused. A silence fell over the court. The nobles' whispers faded. Even Velian's confidence seemed slightly shaken. The idea of survival, not technology, not beauty, made them uneasy. To Viorlians, survival had always seemed ordinary. To humans, it was extraordinary. Show us, Salatha said finally, her tone more commanding than curious. Show us what you mean. Elia's lips curved into a faint, respectful smile. With your permission, princess, she inclined her head. You have it. He reached into a small device at his belt. When activated, a series of glowing images floated in the air between him and the court. They were recordings of human missions, not victories, not parades of glory, just humans in action, facing fire, storms, collapsing structures, strange creatures, and hostile worlds. They were far from the polished perfection of the Virelian court. The images shifted, showing humans crawling through rubble, lifting fallen comrades, running across deserts with gravity heavier than any Virelian world, fighting in storms of acid rain. Every image told the same story. Humans endured, they adapted, they survived. Salatha leaned forward. She had never seen warriors like this, not graceful, not perfect, but unyielding. Strong in ways her people rarely needed to be, they were not polished statues of battle. They were living, breathing proof of resilience. A noble whispered behind her. This is impossible. Elia's gaze swept over the court. It is not impossible, it is hard, it is constant, it is what humans do. Velian stepped closer. And you fight alone. You rely only on yourselves? Elias shook his head. Never alone. We fight with our allies, but we do not depend on them entirely. We take responsibility. When others falter, we continue. When others hesitate, we act. Salatha felt a strange feeling stirring inside her chest. Respect, curiosity, perhaps even something more dangerous, admiration. She had mocked him hours ago, and now she found herself watching, silent, almost unsure what to think. And your armor, she said slowly, does it protect you from these worlds? Yes, he said. But it is not the armor that matters, it is the person inside it, she frowned. Do you mean that the armor is irrelevant? It is relevant, Elias replied, but it cannot replace the will to survive, it cannot replace training, discipline, endurance. These are what keep humans alive. Salatha studied his face again. There was no arrogance there, no false confidence, just truth, and the truth unsettled her. For the first time, she questioned her assumptions about humanity, about strength, about the meaning of power itself. The device then displayed a final set of images. Humans negotiating with hostile species, rescuing allies from impossible situations, walking into lands no one dared enter. One image showed a human, battered and bruised, lifting a child from rubble as explosions lit the sky. Another showed humans repairing their damaged ship in the middle of a storm while their enemies waited nearby. The court went silent. Not a single voice spoke. The images were not beautiful or elegant. They were raw, real, powerful. Salatha turned to Elias. And you do this without magic, without shields that adapt, without energy weapons that slice through steel? Elias shook his head. We rely on what we have, our bodies, our minds, our decisions. We rely on each other. The princess's lips pressed together. For a moment she did not speak. She had seen many beings in the galaxy. Some had weapons that could destroy planets. Some had speed and strength she could barely comprehend, yet none had the quiet confidence of this human. None had endured in the way humans did. You are different, she said finally, her voice softer than before. I did not expect this. I do not live to meet expectations, Elias replied. I live to survive, to protect, to endure. That is our way. The words struck her. They carried a weight she had not anticipated. Salatha had believed that elegance, technology, and beauty defined strength. Here, standing before her, a human had proven that endurance, resilience, and willpower could challenge that belief. Then, without warning, a young Virelian warrior spoke. Surely this human must rely on strength alone? There is no beauty, no artistry, no refinement. How can he match the elegance of our soldiers? Elias' gaze swept the hall. Strength comes in many forms. Yours is one, ours is another. Do not mistake elegance for superiority. A polished shield can break. A sharp blade can dull, but a determined mind, a trained body, a will to survive, these endure. Salatha felt the words like a gentle shock. They were true, they rang true, and in that moment she realized the folly of her earlier mockery. She had laughed at armor, she had expected to see weakness. Instead, she had seen proof of something far more formidable, human resilience. And yet, she said slowly, you have stood here unarmed, unprotected, and still unafraid. I am not unarmed, Elias said calmly. I have my training, my experience, my mind. These are more reliable than any armor when used correctly. The princess stared at him, the court stared at him. For the first time there was no laughter, no doubt, only awareness. The human's way of life, so different from her own, was visible. Not beautiful in the way Viorlians measured beauty, but powerful in a way that could not be ignored. Salatha realized something. The armor had never mattered. What mattered was what lay beneath. The human had stripped away the illusion of technology and elegance and revealed the core of strength itself. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "I have underestimated humans." Elias inclined his head respectfully. "That is common," he said, "until you see the truth." She took a deep breath. A strange feeling of respect and perhaps even caution gathered in her chest. She had laughed at this human hours ago. Now she found herself thinking differently. Her pride, which had once been sharp and untouchable, now felt tempered. The court, sensing the shift in their princess, remained silent. No one dared speak. The nobles, used to mockery and spectacle, could not find words for this. They were witnessing a different kind of strength, one that did not bow to appearances or tradition. Salatha finally turned to Elias. "Tell me," she said, her voice measured, "if your way of strength is so different, why come to my court?" Elias' gaze met her steadily. "Because even in strength, understanding is needed. Even the strongest cannot survive alone in the galaxy. I come to offer alliance, not to boast, to show that humans can be counted on, not because we are perfect, but because we endure." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "And you believe your endurance is enough to earn our respect?" "Not belief," he said simply. "Evidence." With that, he gestured to the armor on the floor. "This is evidence. It shows what humans face, what we survive, and what we can bring to an alliance." Salatha studied the metal again. Once a symbol of mockery, now it seemed almost sacred. It was a reminder that true strength was not in the shine of technology, nor in elegant designs. It was in endurance, discipline, and courage. These things could not be faked or borrowed. They were earned. A hush fell over the court. The human envoy, unarmored, standing quietly in the center, had changed the room. What began as laughter ended as contemplation. The Viorlian nobles looked at each other, unsure what to say. Their princess, the one who had mocked him, now faced a new challenge, understanding a species whose strength was invisible to them, yet undeniable. Salatha, still standing, realized something else. This was only the beginning. If humans could endure this much unarmed in front of her court, what might they do on the battlefield? What might they do across the galaxy? And how would Viorlia measure its own strength against such endurance? She straightened her posture, her mind racing. She had laughed at armor. Now she wondered if she had laughed at something far greater, the human spirit itself. And she knew, deep down, that she would never look at humans the same way again. The Crystal Court remained silent long after Captain Elias Ward had finished showing the images of human endurance. Princess Salatha sat in her high chair, her fingers lightly tapping the armrest. Her mind was a storm of thoughts. Humans were not what she had expected, not weak, not naive, not foolish. But what they truly were she could not yet define. Elias stood quietly, hands at his sides, calm as always. His presence seemed to command respect without asking for it. The court watched him cautiously, unsure if they should speak. The images alone had already made many of the nobles question their assumptions, and now they hesitated, unsure how to respond. Salatha finally broke the silence. "You speak of endurance," she said, her voice steady. "Of survival, but can humans fight with strategy, or do you simply rely on stubbornness and stubborn will?" Elias tilted his head slightly. "Strategy is part of endurance, knowing when to act, when to wait, when to sacrifice, and when to protect. That is how we survive." "Show us," Salatha said. "Words are easy, actions are what matter." Elias nodded. With a motion of his hand, he activated a holographic device. A three-dimensional map of a distant battlefield appeared, glowing above the floor. Stars, asteroids, and ruined cities filled the display. Tiny models of ships, ground forces, and alien settlements moved across it, showing the chaos of war. "This is the planet Cerex 7, Elias explained. A human expedition was sent there. We faced extreme gravity, toxic atmosphere, and hostile species. Most armies would have retreated. Most envoys would have fled. Humans did not." The hologram shifted, showing human soldiers maneuvering through rubble, constructing defenses, and moving injured civilians to safety. Aliens observed silently, their eyes widening. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, yet the sequence of movements revealed a carefully planned strategy. Not improvisation, not luck, thoughtful, deliberate action. A Viorlian noble who had been skeptical from the start whispered, "This is incredible. They are organized. They do not panic, even under fire. Elias' gaze swept across the court. Humans train for situations that no other species faces. We do not always have perfect conditions. We do not always have strong allies. We rely on our minds as much as our bodies. That is why endurance alone is not enough. We must act wisely. Salatha leaned forward. And this worked? Your people survived? Yes, Elias said simply. Because we learned from every mistake. Every battle teaches us something new. We adapt, we endure, we protect, and we do not give up even when all seems lost. A pause filled the hall. Salatha's mind raced. Her people relied on technology, energy shields, and elegant weapons. Humans relied on something far simpler but far more difficult to master: discipline, observation, teamwork, courage, perseverance. You make it sound so easy, she said, her voice half amusement, half disbelief. It is not easy, Elias replied. Nothing worth doing is. But it is effective. Salatha glanced at her nobles. She could see confusion in their eyes, curiosity, and the first faint glimmers of respect. The human before them was not merely a soldier. He was a teacher, showing them a new kind of strength. One that could not be measured by the shine of armor or the hum of energy weapons. The hologram shifted again. Now it showed a single human, separated from the group. A massive alien creature towered over him, claws sharp, eyes glowing. The human faced it calmly, holding only a simple weapon. The creature struck, but the human dodged and used the environment to his advantage. With precise movements, he forced the creature into a trap, neutralizing it without dying. Salatha's breath caught. She had watched soldiers face danger before, but none with such control. Humans did not rely on superior technology to win. They relied on skill, intelligence, and bravery. It was alien to her in the truest sense. "Why did you not use your armor?" she asked softly, almost to herself. Elias' eyes met hers. "Because it would not have helped here. Tools are useful, but they do not replace thought and courage. And sometimes relying on tools can make you weaker if your mind does not adapt." A few nobles shifted in their places. They had always believed that a shield or weapon could solve every problem. Now they wondered if their faith in technology had blinded them. If humans could survive without elegant tools, could they survive situations Virelians would avoid entirely? Salatha's mind raced with possibilities. Humans could be allies, but not ordinary allies. They could survive missions her people would never attempt. They could endure conditions that would kill the most advanced Virelian warriors. They could act with intelligence, courage, and perseverance, even when surrounded by danger. "And yet," she said, a small smile forming, "you come to my court unarmed, asking for alliance. You ask us to trust you with our lives." Elias nodded. "Trust is built on evidence, not assumptions. You have seen what humans endure. You have seen how we act when failure is not an option. That is why I stand here, unarmored, unshielded. To show you the truth, not to demand respect." Salatha felt a strange warmth inside her chest. She had thought humans were weak, primitive, and easy to mock. Now she realized she had been wrong, perhaps entirely wrong. She had laughed at armor. Now she understood that the armor had been irrelevant. The true measure of strength was far deeper. The princess's thoughts were interrupted by a loud sound from the outer hall, a warning signal. The doors to the court slid open, revealing a scout from the palace towers, breathless and alarmed. "Princess Salatha," the scout shouted, "an enemy fleet has been detected near the system. They approach quickly. Our defenses may not hold," the nobles gasped. The hall buzzed with sudden energy. Alarms began to ring in distant chambers. Salatha's calm composure remained, but her mind raced. The fleet of the Caerlean marauders had been rumored, but no one expected them to approach so quickly. Virelian shields were strong, but not invincible. Elias straightened. "I can assist," he said, his voice calm, measured. "If you allow me." Salatha's eyes narrowed. "Assist? How? We have the most advanced technology in this sector. You stand here without armor." "What could you possibly do?" Elias' gaze did not waver. "I rely on experience, strategy, and teamwork. That is enough." The princess studied him for a long moment. His calm confidence mirrored what she had seen in the holograms. He did not fear the fleet. He did not overestimate his abilities. He simply trusted in preparation and skill. That was human strength. "Very well," she said finally. "Show me what humans can do." Elias nodded once and moved toward the holographic map. He began to outline a plan. Every movement was deliberate, every decision considered. He assigned positions, calculated risks, and considered both offense and defense. The nobles watched, astonished. This was not a display of weapon power. This was strategy, adaptability, and clear thinking under pressure. Move the cruiser units to flank the enemy, Elias instructed. Use long-range disruptors first. Do not commit the main fleet until the enemy formation is weakened. Ground forces should be ready to secure any survivors, but only after the orbital units establish control. Everyone must act together. Any deviation will create a gap. Salatha watched, fascinated. No one had ever spoken with such clarity in her court. No plan had ever seemed so precise, so adaptable, and yet so simple. The nobles nodded and followed his instructions, amazed at how easily he commanded cooperation without arrogance or authority beyond respect. Elias continued. Predict their movement patterns based on fleet history. If they retreat, do not pursue recklessly. If they advance aggressively, do not panic. Humans have survived worse. We adapt. We endure. So should you. The princess realized with a thrill she did not expect that the human had changed the court again. Not by strength of arms, not by polished armor. Not by laughter or charm, by calm, clear intelligence, by endurance, by showing the court that true strength lay not in appearances but in understanding and action. For the first time, Salatha felt uncertain, not about the humans but about her own assumptions. The fleet of marauders would arrive soon. Her court would be tested, and she knew that the presence of this human, standing before her calmly, would make all the difference. She had mocked armor hours ago. Now she understood that what humans had beneath the armor, their courage, strategy, and endurance, was far more valuable than any shield or weapon. And perhaps, she thought quietly, this was only the beginning of what she would learn from them. The crystal court was no longer a place of laughter. The alarms blared, and the polished floor vibrated with the arrival of the enemy fleet. Outside the tall, crystal walls, the stars were lit with movement, ships of the Caerlean marauders approaching fast, their engines glowing a harsh red. Virelia's defenses were strong, but no shield was perfect, and the fleet's speed left little time to react. Princess Salatha rose from her chair, her cloak swirling around her as she moved toward the holographic map. Her hands gripped the console tightly. "Alert all defense units," she commanded. "Activate shields and prepare the energy cannons. Every warrior must hold their position." The nobles rushed to obey. Their elegant armor reflected the lights of the control panels, their polished weapons ready for action. Yet in the midst of the activity, all eyes were drawn to Captain Elias Ward. He stood unshaken, his calm demeanor contrasting with the chaos around him. The princess could not help but watch him. He did not fumble or hesitate. He simply observed, analyzing the approaching fleet, calculating the best strategies to defend the system. "Princess," Elias said, his voice clear above the alarms, "if you allow me to coordinate with your fleet, I can maximize our defense. Do not waste power on unnecessary attacks. Focus on coordination. Use what your enemies do not expect." Salatha raised an eyebrow. "And you believe this will work?" Elias' eyes were steady. "I do not believe, I know we will endure." She nodded. Her pride was tempered by trust, a trust she had not offered lightly. "Very well, human, lead the strategy." Immediately, Elias moved to the holographic map. Tiny models of Virelian cruisers, fighters, and ground defenses appeared alongside the marauder ships. He gestured to the controls, repositioning the Virelian units with precise, calculated movements. "Move the interceptor squadrons to the flanks," he instructed. "They will draw attention while the heavier cruisers target the lead ships. Keep the shields tight, but do not waste energy on ships that are already damaged. Focus on the weak points. Time and patience are more powerful than brute force." A young noble scoffed. "Patience." In the middle of battle, Elias turned to him, calm and direct. "Patience is the difference between survival and annihilation. React without thought and you will lose everything." The noble hesitated, realizing his words had been foolish. The human was right. There was no time for arrogance here, only calculation. The first shots of the battle erupted in the distance. The marauder fleet launched a series of energy blasts at the outer shields of Virelia. Explosions rippled across the crystal walls, shaking the floor of the court. The alarms sounded even louder, yet the human's calm remained. He guided the Virelian fleet like a conductor directing an orchestra. "Hold formation, wait for them to overextend, then strike," he instructed, and strike they did. The interceptors darted in from the flanks, forcing the marauders to scatter and lose coordination. The heavier cruisers fired with precision at the exposed gaps. The first wave of enemy ships was neutralized without significant loss to Vyrlia. Salatha watched in awe. The human did not need to fight physically. His mind alone had turned the tide. Yet she could feel something more building inside her, a mixture of respect and astonishment. The human had taken what she had mocked, what she had laughed at, and transformed it into a tool of survival. But the battle was far from over. The second wave of marauders arrived, faster and more coordinated. Their weapons cut through the outer shields, striking the crystal walls with tremendous force. Sparks flew and panels began to flicker. The court shook violently as the alarms blared. Salatha clenched her fists. "We must hold them here. Do not let them reach the inner system." Elias' gaze remained steady. "Focus on teamwork. Protect each other. Do not rely on luck. Rely on coordination and persistence." He moved among the officers, issuing orders with calm authority. His words were precise, his tone confident. "Deploy the rapid response units to the areas where shields are weakest. Reinforce the vulnerable points. Protect the civilians at all costs. Wait for the enemy to make mistakes. They always do." A squad of Vyrlian fighters hesitated, unsure if they could trust the human's unconventional strategy. But Elias' steady presence gave them courage. Slowly, they followed his plan, moving as a single unit instead of scattered individuals. The marauders, expecting chaotic resistance, were caught off guard. Their formation broke as the humans and Vyrlians coordinated attacks with unexpected precision. The rapid response units struck at the gaps in the enemy line, while the heavier cruisers followed Elias' calculations to devastating effect. Salatha's heart pounded as she watched the battle unfold. She had expected humans to struggle. She had expected them to rely on brute strength alone. But this was something else entirely. Humans were using strategy, observation, and endurance to dominate a battle that should have been impossible to control. "Your people are remarkable," she said quietly, almost to herself. I did not expect this." Elias' eyes met hers briefly. "Do not underestimate anyone, princess. Not humans, not your people, not the enemy. Every life counts. Every decision matters." The battle intensified. Explosions lit the space outside the court like violent fireworks. The floor shook with each impact. Alarms rang relentlessly. But the humans and Vyrlians, under Elias' guidance, continued to hold the line. Then a massive Kyrlian dreadnought broke through the shields. Its weapons were enormous, capable of destroying multiple cruisers at once. Panic threatened to spread among the Vyrlian officers. Elias remained calm. "Do not fear it," he said. "The dreadnought is powerful, but it has weaknesses. Focus on its sides and engines. Divide your attacks. Concentrate fire on vulnerable points. Timing is everything." The Vyrlian fleet hesitated, unsure if the humans' plan would succeed. But Elias did not hesitate. He led a small squadron personally, guiding them with skill and confidence. They maneuvered around the dreadnought, striking at the engines with rapid precision. The dreadnought faltered. Its shields weakened. The crew struggled to regain control. And in the moment of hesitation, the Vyrlian fleet followed Elias' commands, striking in perfect synchronization. The dreadnought exploded in a brilliant flash, scattering debris across space. A cheer erupted from some corners of the court, but Salatha remained silent. She could not tear her eyes from Elias. The human had turned a near-impossible situation into a victory with calm, focus, and strategy alone. The battle continued, but now it was clear who held the advantage. The marauder fleet, confused and weakened, began to retreat. Their formations fell apart. Their attacks became disorganized. The human strategy combined with the Vyrlian fleet's strength was unstoppable. Finally, the last marauder ships withdrew, leaving the system safe. The alarms ceased. The crystal walls of the court were still intact, though the floor vibrated with the residual energy of the battle. Salatha stood in silence. Her court was safe. The humans had proven themselves. But more than that, they had proven something she had never expected. True strength did not lie in beauty, technology, or power alone. It lay in endurance, strategy, and courage. The nobles, once laughing at the human, now stared with awe. They had witnessed a new kind of warrior. One who did not rely on flashy weapons or glowing armor. One who relied on calm thought, courage, and the refusal to give up. Salatha finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "Captain Elias Ward, you have shown us a strength we did not understand." You have turned mockery into silence and fear into respect. You have proven that true power is not always obvious, but it is undeniable. Elias bowed his head slightly. I only do what is necessary to survive and protect. That is all any human can do. Salatha's eyes softened. She had laughed at him hours ago, scorned his armor, and underestimated him completely. Now she understood. She could see clearly that the human had changed her perception, not just of him, but of all humanity. Your people are unlike any we have encountered, she said. And I did not know what to expect, but now I see that humans are a force of endurance, strategy, and courage. You have earned the respect of this court and of me. Elias' expression remained calm. Respect is earned by action, princess. By surviving, protecting, and enduring, that is all humans ask. For the first time, Salatha smiled, not with amusement, but with understanding. She had learned a lesson in humility, strength, and endurance. A human had arrived at her court unarmored and calm, and had shown her a truth she could not ignore. Humans were not weak. Humans were not naive. Humans were unstoppable when they refused to surrender. The crystal court, once filled with laughter, now held only silence. Silence of awe, respect, and contemplation. The princess's heart, proud and sharp as ever, was now tempered by something new. Admiration for a human who had survived against impossible odds and led her court through victory without ever raising a weapon unnecessarily. The lesson was clear. Strength came in many forms, and sometimes it came quietly beneath the surface in ways that no one expected. The crystal court was alive with energy once more, but this time it was not laughter. The echoes of battle still lingered, and the distant glow of the defeated Caerlean fleet faded slowly into space. Violia had survived not by technology alone, not by elegance or shields, but through calm planning, teamwork, and endurance. And at the center of it all stood Captain Elias Ward, the human envoy who had taught the court a lesson it would not soon forget. Princess Salatha moved through the hall, her steps measured and deliberate. She approached the center where Elias remained standing, unarmed but strong. The court fell silent, sensing the importance of this moment. The nobles, once skeptical and mocking, now looked on with quiet respect. They had seen courage, intelligence, and endurance displayed in the most critical moment their planet had faced in decades. Salatha raised her hand, commanding attention. Today, she began, her voice calm but firm, the Crystal Court has witnessed an event that none of us expected. A human has shown us the meaning of true strength, not in armor, not in weapons, not in elegance, but in will, intelligence, and endurance. Whispers rippled through the court. Nobles glanced at one another, acknowledging the truth of her words. The images of the battle, the calm control of the human, and the precise victory over the marauder fleet remained vivid in their minds. Elias inclined his head respectfully. I only did what humans always do, he said. We face danger, we endure, we protect those who rely on us, that is our way. Salatha's eyes softened. She remembered her laughter earlier, mocking the human's heavy, simple armor. She remembered her assumption that humans were weak and backward compared to her people. Now she realized how wrong she had been. You have earned the respect of this court, she said slowly. And mine as well. For hours, I believed strength could be measured by appearances. I believed technology and beauty defined power. But you, Captain Elias Ward, you have shown me that true strength comes from within, from courage, from endurance, from the refusal to surrender, even in impossible situations. The human's expression remained calm. He had expected acknowledgement, but he did not seek it. Thank you, Princess. Respect is earned by action, not by words, he said. Salatha studied him for a long moment. There was something remarkable about humans, not just their endurance or strategy, but their humility. They acted, survived, and led, yet they did not boast or demand glory. They simply did what was necessary. The court remained silent, reflecting on the words and the actions that had just unfolded. The nobles had learned an important lesson, that appearances could be deceiving, and that even the seemingly simple or unpolished could contain unimaginable strength. Salatha spoke again. Captain, your actions today have proven that humans are not merely outsiders in this galaxy. They are allies, warriors, friends, and I am honored to have witnessed your skill, your courage, and your endurance. Elias nodded. It is an honor to be trusted, Princess. Humans do not seek admiration. We seek to survive, to protect, and to endure. If our actions inspire respect, that is a consequence, not a goal. Salatha smiled faintly. For the first time, she realized she had learned something more than strategy or bravery. She had learned humility. She had learned to see beyond appearances and to value the unseen strength that lay beneath. Humans were a species of endurance, of courage, of intelligence, and she would never forget it. She turned to the court. "Let this day be remembered," she said, her voice carrying across the hall, "as the day we learned that strength is not always obvious, that courage does not always shine, and that those who endure, who act, who protect, who survive, are the true warriors of the galaxy." The nobles bowed their heads in acknowledgement. Even Velian, once skeptical, stepped forward. "Princess Salatha is right," he said. "We have underestimated humans. Today we have seen what they are capable of, and we owe them not only respect but our recognition." Elias inclined his head. He did not seek praise, yet he accepted it quietly, aware of the significance of the moment. The court had learned something important, that humanity, though simple in some ways, was extraordinary in ways no technology or beauty could replicate. Salatha gestured toward the human's armor, which lay in a circle around him. "This armor," she said, "once the source of my mockery, now stands as a symbol, not of weakness but of resilience, not of simplicity but of survival. It has taught us that even what seems ordinary can hold extraordinary truth beneath it." A few young nobles approached cautiously, touching the armor with reverence. They had laughed hours ago. Now they saw it differently. They understood that the human had survived worlds, enemies, and dangers that Virelians could barely imagine. The armor had been the shield of survival, yes, but the human had been the true weapon. Salatha's gaze returned to Elias. "Tell me, Captain, what is it that humans seek in the galaxy? What drives you to face impossible odds, to survive when most would fail?" Elias' voice was calm, steady, and honest. "We do not seek glory. We do not seek wealth or fame. We seek survival, protection, and endurance. We face danger not because we desire it, but because it is our duty. Because when others cannot act, we must. That is what humans are." Salatha nodded slowly. She felt a sense of clarity she had never experienced before. The lesson was complete. Strength was not always visible. Courage did not need decoration. And endurance, when combined with intelligence and heart, could overcome any obstacle. The court had been tested by war and survived, yes, but the true victory was in understanding humans. Understanding that they were capable of incredible feats. Understanding that mockery, pride, and assumptions could never measure the depth of true courage. Elias finally spoke again, turning his attention to the princess. "Princess Salatha, I came here as an envoy. I expected to negotiate, to establish trust, to represent humanity, but I did not expect to teach lessons in strength. That was not my goal." Salatha's lips curved into a small smile. "And yet you have done so," she said softly. "You have taught me in my court that strength lies not in armor or weapons, but in the heart, mind, and will of the warrior. You have shown us that humans, though different, are extraordinary." For a moment, the hall was silent again. Then the nobles began to speak quietly among themselves, sharing thoughts and admiration. They began to see humans not as outsiders, not as simple or weak, but as capable, disciplined, and brave allies. Salatha raised her hand once more, silencing them. "Let this day mark a new beginning," she said. "Humans are not only survivors, they are teachers of endurance, and today they have earned our respect, our trust, and our admiration." Elias inclined his head respectfully. "Then my mission is complete," he said simply. Salatha's gaze softened. "No, Captain, your mission is only beginning, for the galaxy is vast and humans will show us much more. But today you have changed the way we see strength, and for that you have my deepest respect." The princess paused, then added almost quietly, "And perhaps my own pride has learned humility because of you." Elias' calm expression did not change, yet there was a quiet acknowledgement in his eyes. He had not sought recognition, yet he had earned it, not through words, but through action, endurance, and courage. The court, once filled with mockery and arrogance, was now transformed. Laughter had been replaced with respect. Assumptions had been replaced with understanding. Pride had been tempered with humility. And at the center of it all stood the human who had survived impossible odds, taught the meaning of strength, and left the crystal court speechless. Princess Salatha turned to the nobles, her voice carrying the weight of authority and reflection. "Remember this day," she said. "Remember what you have seen. Remember what humans can endure, what they can teach, and what they can inspire. Strength is not always obvious. Courage is not always loud, But when it appears, it is undeniable and unforgettable. The court bowed, the lesson absorbed deeply into their minds. Even Velian, the skeptical noble, looked at Elias with a newfound understanding. They had learned humility, courage, and respect, the values that humans carried not in technology or beauty, but in their very being. Elias finally turned away from the holographic map, his task complete. He had not sought glory, and he had not sought praise. Yet he had accomplished something far greater. He had shown the Crystal Court the true meaning of human strength. Salatha watched him for a moment longer. The laughter, the mockery, the doubts, they were all gone. In their place was clarity, respect, and the recognition that humanity was a force unlike any other. And for the first time, she realized that humans were not merely survivors. They were teachers, warriors, and allies whose courage and endurance would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The Crystal Court had witnessed something extraordinary that day. And Princess Salatha knew, without a doubt, that the galaxy would never see humans in the same way again. Captain Elias Ward had arrived as an envoy. He had faced mockery and doubt. He had removed his armor, revealed his strength, and led the court through strategy, courage, and endurance. And in doing so, he had changed everything. The court was silent, but in that silence was understanding. In that silence was respect. And in that silence was the knowledge that humans, though different, were extraordinary. Princess Salatha finally spoke, her voice soft but full of admiration. "You have shown us the truth, Captain, and for that the Crystal Court will never forget your name." Elias simply nodded. He did not need more. The lesson had been learned, the respect earned, and the galaxy would remember. The Crystal Court, once filled with mockery, now stood united in awe of a human who had shown that true strength was not in appearances, but in the heart, mind, and will to endure. And in that moment, humanity's place in the galaxy was secured, not by weapons, not by shields, not by beauty, but by courage, strategy, and the refusal to give up.